What's up, guys? In this episode we're going to be putting GU Patrol diffs under my 45 series cab on the 80 series chassis powered by a BARRA turbo. We are creating an absolute monster. I'm just quickly going to run you through a few reasons of why I've chosen this option before we jump into the video. So the first reason I'm doing this is because the Nissan front diff center itself is stronger than the Toyota one. And I guess if you were to bolt a Nissan front on, then the track width would be unequal to the Toyota rear, so you have to replace both at the same time to get equal track width. Otherwise you end up like a 79 series, and we don't want that. There are hybrid diff options available as well, and they're all really good, but I guess this is just the way I'm going because it's something I can do in my shed, and it's just going to be straight replacement parts from Nissan diffs, apart from the housing, that is. So I'm using an H260 coil rear, which has a load rating of 2,300 kilos, and the 80 series load rating is 1,800 kilos on the axle. So there are heaps of different compliance plates around, and I guess don't hold me to this because, you know, I'm literally just going off information that I've seen with my own eyes, and models do change over time. Plus 500 kilos on the rear axle, which is going to become important in the long term, and I'll explain why in about 12 months. So thirdly, I've actually been developing this process with LCS 4x4, and we started the development way before we started filming this video, and I get to put it into action during this video, which is going to be really cool, and you get to see the jig that we've developed later on in this video. Realistically, there are enough differences between the Patrol and Landcruiser diffs to make a whole video on it, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep it really high level. I'm sure there are going to be comments saying that Landcruiser diffs are better, but there are pros and cons of both of them. Do your research, do your reading, and I've made up my mind that I think these Patrol ones are better, so that's why I'm doing it. So enough of my rambling, let's get into the build log now. So here are my two Nissan GU diffs. These have a 4:1 ratio. So this is the H260 rear diff, which has a really big center, but fear not, we've got a plan to cut and shut it so we don't compromise ground clearance for diffing out. So let's talk about the plan. So for these axles, I have to completely strip them of any internals. Then I have to, for the rear one, I have to cut off all the mounts with a plasma cutter and grind them all back. And this is what it's going to look like. This is one I prepared earlier for your reference. No, I'm joking. Someone's done all the hard work. So that's what the rear one's going to look like. Luckily for me, the front one's bolt in because it's quite a lot of work. For the front one, we're going to have a diff brace kit, which goes on the front axle. And then for the rear one, we have to re-weld on completely new mounts. Now, I've been developing a jig with Lawrence, which you'll be able to see, and we're going to weld on completely new mounts and a couple of mounts from the 80 series as well. So in the meantime, I'm going to send off my diff centers to someone to put some lockers in them. So I'm going with the ARB air lockers, so we're going to be triple locked on this vehicle. So we're changing from the 80 series transfer case to this Patrol transfer case. So these are much beefier, and they've also got a handbrake included on them, which is really good because Landcruiser handbrakes never work. So that's the Nissan steering box, or that's the Patrol steering box we're swapping to, and then there are my drive shafts. We're also having to replumb the power steering, but that's not a big issue. So I'm pulling the rear diff apart now. I've never ever pulled a diff apart in my life, so I'm not going to make this a how-to video. Watch the struggle on the time lapse. There'll be a lot of it. Just having a look at all the gears, and everything looks intact, which is fantastic, and same with the axles, so good news. Got Georgie boy helped me out tonight. Absolute legend. More of a hindrance. So I've pulled the diffs completely apart. That's the front one. The center was an absolute prick to get out. Got the centers here. Now the centers look really good. There's not a whole heap of wear, pretty hard to see with the light. I'm really stoked with the condition of the centers, and then there's splines. They don't seem to have any wear as well. So yeah, I've lucked out really with some quality diffs. They're almost, well, they're not new, but I mean, you know, brand new secondhand. So the next step is to grind all the mounts off this one and plasma cut them. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so I've completed this side and I've still got to do this side. It really didn't take me that long at all, probably only 10 minutes. Joking, it took me bloody ages, so I'm not going to film that side, I'll do it off camera. But yeah, you get the idea. It's nice and smooth and flush and ready for some new mounts to be welded on there. So I'll just rinse and repeat there, and yeah, we're good to send it off to blasting. Unfortunately, we have to cannibalize my 80 series rear diff. So we're going to jack the car up now and take it out and then cut off the spring perches and panhard mount. To do this conversion, we have to cannibalize the 80 series housing. I'm going to do all this off camera. It's going to take ages. You've already seen enough grinding and plasmering with the Nissan diffs. Got all my 80 series mounts here, so I'm going to send them off to blasting as well. So I've sealed up everything that I can with wood so that the bead or the sand doesn't get in. These diffs are heading off to sandblasting now. Once they're done, we'll head down to LCS 4x4 and talk about the diff jig and get these things welded off with 80 series brackets. Huge shout out to LCS 4x4. Have a look at some of the builds he's got going. So this one's got an LSA in it. This is some sort of LS. I'm not educated, so don't hold me to it. And then, yeah, we've got his old man's one, the one that started it all for me, sitting right here. So it's getting a bit of a freshen up and getting some more power from my understanding. So I guess, no, it's pretty cool coming down here, just sort of in 40 series heaven. So make sure you go give Lawrence a follow. He does really good work. Okay, so down here at LCS 4x4 today, and we have the jig which myself and Lawrence from LCS 4x4 have come up with to do these conversions. So the idea behind this jig is it keeps the hard points in the same spot, so you don't have to modify or change the rear mounting points on an 80 series chassis, so you're still able to retain the same links from an 80 series. So I guess, you know, people do these conversions without using jigs. You know, Lawrence himself has done it before, and I guess we just wanted accuracy and repeatability, so we've gone for a jig option to keep these hard points for the lower and upper arms in exactly the same spot. Let's just start with the weld table. So if you remember a few months ago on Design and Build, I designed and built this weld table, and I left some extra slots on the top. And at the time, I didn't actually know what I was going to need the slots for, but I just thought I'd future-proof the weld table and leave the slots on the top. And you know, the opportunity sort of came up to do this with LCS 4x4, and yeah, we've utilised the slots. So literally, this jig just lifts on and off the table. When we're not using this jig, Lawrence can still use it as a weld table. We've got exactly the same weld table cut for Lawrence. I guess that was one of the big differences between my weld table and the commercially available weld table at the time. None of the commercially available ones had the slots in the top, but you know, I did the CAD. I left the slots in just so we can do stuff like this, and we've got more ideas and you know, more things that we can do with these slots. So I guess, you know, this is the first one that we've actually put into practice, and we're really happy with the way it turned out. There's a couple of big 40 builds at the moment that have access to 3D scanners, and we don't have access. What we've got is basic measuring utensils or implements like a measuring tape, and we've got our brains, and that's how we've done this. So I wish we had access to a 3D scanner, but we don't, and it's all possible to do without a 3D scanner, which I think is the cool thing. You've just got to sort of use your brain and go a bit old school with the way you measure it. So this is our IP that we've developed together, and there's a lot of time in development to get something like this, and I couldn't have done it without Lawrence, and I don't think he could have done it without me. He may have been able to, credit where credit's due, he's a smart cookie. But yeah, so this is sort of what we've come up with together. We've redesigned and beefed up the upper and lower control arm mounts, but the spring perches themselves are actually quite hard to make. So these, I think, to the best of my knowledge, are a stamped part, and we can't reproduce them with the Landcruiser springs cheaply because of something like that. I think, you know, for the small sort of number of production parts we would need, it's not worth our time. So we're actually cutting up an 80 series diff housing to complete the conversion. And while we're there, we're sort of also using these shock mounts, and we're using a panhard mount as well from an 80 series housing. And there's no shortage of 80 series housings on marketplace, so it's not really a problem at all for us. And then yeah, as I mentioned, we have redesigned some brackets as well. So I guess that's sort of what I want to say about the brackets. Another thing I should mention is the weld sequence on diffs is really important, and we've given it a lot of thought. And when I say weld sequence, let's just hypothetically say we welded everything on the top side of the diff at the same time. Obviously, it's got a lot of heat, and it's probably likely to banana up, and and then the diff's not going to be straight. So I think Lawrence and I have nutted out a pretty decent weld sequence, and I think we're going to be fine. And it's something that we can check in the jig afterwards, because we know that this is true to the table. We know that the jig runs true. So we can check, if we've bananaed it using our weld sequence, and hopefully that's not going to happen. But yeah, I mean, this jig, there are just so many benefits of actually using something like this to do this conversion, as opposed to just going freehand. So that's another thing that I thought I should mention. While we're still talking about the jig, I just wanted to show you the CAD. So I modeled the H260 diff just with a measuring tape, and that's how we designed the jig. Something I didn't show you before was these clamps that hold the diff in the jig. The clamps are also there to stop it from warping as we weld. And just on the weld sequence as well, I did mention before that we're letting it cool down a lot in between welds to minimize warping. So to design these brackets and get them exactly right, I've been doing a bit of a mix of old school and new school. So I've actually been using cardboard templates, scanning them on my 2D scanner, then I put them into CAD and I use the auto trace function, and then I print them back out onto an A4 sheet, cut them out and make sure it matches my cardboard template, which means that this is going to get perfectly laser cut. Bit of a closer look at the jig. Normally I really enjoy doing all my own welding, but here's some real talk for you. I'm not super great on a MIG, as those of you who have been following this, my journey would know. So Lawrence is doing the welding on my diff, and that's because these are probably the most important welds on the car, and he is far better at welding than me. So I think, sometimes it's important. You got to know when to call it. Have a look at this weld detail. So he is a very, very good MIG welder. So that's why I'm getting him to do them. I just honestly don't have confidence in my MIG welds quite yet for this sort of stuff. So that's why I'm doing this. One of the disadvantages of using the H260 is a huge center. So we're just shaving the bottom of it now. I think we're using an 8 or a 10mm plate here, which is way thicker than the original housing, so that'll be all good for the tracks, nice and strong. Laurie welding up my front diff brace kit as well, so again, he's much better on the MIG than me. He's actually really good at it, so yeah, I think it's the wise move. Just in here with the camera phone, I'm leak testing with some petrol. Now you can see the pool there. So, I mean, we're looking really good. Obviously, the drips there are just from the cloth. But yeah, I mean, we're looking really good. If it's gonna leak, I mean, the petrol is way less dense than oil. So, if it doesn't leak with the petrol, then we're going to be sweet with the oil. So we've actually welded this on the inside and the outside as well. So yeah, there's a little insight for you. Have a look at this weld detail. He does some beautiful work. Go give him a follow if I haven't already plugged him already. So yeah, this is the rear one. I mean, everything's in place. We've got spring perches, we've got the shock mounts, we've got the panhard mounts, and yeah, we've done the chop. We leak tested it with the petrol, and I think that's going to get us close to almost 40 mil ground clearance. Probably takes us back to regular H233 size. And then this is the front one here. So we've got the brace kit. So obviously there's this big brace which runs through here. Now, I think it's probably fair to say that it's within my ability to sort of come up with a sheet metal part like this, but the reality is it takes a lot of time. And I think this kit was like $150, which included this brace here and then these braces here as well. So on each of the sort of the arm mounts, we've got just little washers, oversized washers. And I think, you know, for $150, it's just not worth my time to sort of, by the time I pay for the, you know, the actual manufacture of it, definitely just worth buying straight off Roadrunner off-road. So that's sort of why I went down that route. We're good to paint these things. So I have wire wheeled everything. I've prepped it all, and I'm pretty sure that we're good to go. I'm using Valspar Satin Black to paint all my underbody and bar work with. So I'm going to go ahead and mix that up right now, and then I'll be able to paint my diffs. I guess quickly, let's just talk about my setup. I have the world's worst compressor, or the world's cheapest compressor at least, and then I have an Azedo spray gun, and I really don't have an ideal spray setup at all. I've just got a bunch of sheets, but you know what? We're going to make do with it. If I end up painting the cab, then I'll invest in some better tools. Okay, just got finished with the diffs and they came out pretty well. I am by no means an expert in painting. Of course, I've painted stuff before, but really haven't had any experience in painting anything on my car. Actually, none in fact. So I guess whatever I did, probably just do the opposite. But these did come out all right. I guess it's good that I'm starting from the diffs before we go to anything that you can actually see. So we're just slapping everything together really quickly and then putting it back on the car. So got a friend George here helping me. So this is a bit of a moment of truth for design and build and that jig and the diff, and all the links are attached. So we've just got to put this spring in and attach this, but this is, no, this is huge. So I am stoked. It's sort of a lot of work to get to this point. All fitted up now. Unbelievably stoked. About to put it back on its wheels, so we got the front end fitted up, and I've got some custom arms for the patrol diff at the front. So good to go and put it back down on its wheels. So this is pretty exciting. This is a lot of work to get to this point. So I don't quite have the steering arms yet. They're in progress, and we're going to cover that in the next episode. So you can see everything's a bit crooked. Got Jesse helping me out today. Killing it. So there we go, the front one all bolted in. I'm bloody stoked. And then here's a better shot of the rear one while it's all on the ground. So have a look at that plate. So we've shaved probably, I'd say 40 mil off the bottom of that diff, which is gonna really help me for diff out. So we're probably back to standard 80 series, which is kind of funny, but the center is way, way bigger. So you might be wondering why I didn't go a triangulated 4-link, and that's simply because of packaging space. Believe me, it was talked about. So one of the difficult things about these builds is the amount of packaging space you have, because we've shortened the chassis so much, and I have an early series cab, which means it's the low floor. It is hard to package everything in. So basically, if I went triangulated 4-link, it would mean that I couldn't really have this second tank in here. Maybe I could have a small one up there, but I guess I want to do a bit of touring in this vehicle as well. So that's the main reason why I want to keep 2 fuel tanks, 200 litres, and that's going to give me plenty of range. You wouldn't believe how many hours have gone into this to get it back on its wheels, so I am absolutely stoked right now. There's still a heap of work left on my end, which is why I'm going to split this over 2 episodes, not just because, you know, I'm chasing YouTube content or anything. There's still a heap of hours left. So I've still got to put the GU steering box on the front, which involves a bit of design work, and then I've got to modify the cross member and put the transfer case in. I've got to get drive shafts, and I've also got to put all the front links in as well, plumb the power steering, and then we're back to where we were probably a few months ago. So there's still a heap of hours left on my end. I hope you enjoyed that episode, guys. I've still got a lot of work to do to finish off the driveline. I know that I said in a previous episode that I wanted to keep a stock driveline, but that is out the window now, and I think this is going to be better in the long term for my car. And I've got a few ideas which you'll probably see in about 12 months time, and everything that you've seen me do to date will all make sense and it'll all click, but we're still a long way away from doing that, and I have to do a lot of building and a lot of designing before we get there. So that brings us to the end of the episode. Let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you want to see more. Cheers.